Right, so we are now recording.
Sorry, I didn't
so welcome everyone to our weekly call. The main topic for the call this week, as you can see on screen, if you're looking at that, is Rule 53. If you can think of it, someone else has done it in the DNS, which Peter is going to take us through in a moment. After that, if there is any time left, which is unlikely, because I know this is quite an extensive presentation, then I'll sort of pick up on a couple of things from the news this week, as well as to highlight a few forthcoming events, but and anything else that anyone wants to raise at the end. Yeah, and as John's just helped me put on the chat, DNS is still just winding up, so we may have a few more people sort of joining partway through, but they can always catch up with the start if they miss it from the recording. So without further ado, Peter, over to you.
Thanks, Andrew. And can I say from the beginning that Andrew has done me a terrible disservice by hyping this up way beyond anything that I had imagined that this would be. And also the template that we have at DNSFilter for slides is terrible. I think the white on the light blue is not great for the heading, the title slide. But anyway, yeah, this is just a little presentation about crazy uses of DNS. And the subtitle is Rule 53. If you can think of it. Someone's done it in the DNS. Right, so yeah, hello. I had a bunch of different alternative titles for this. Weird things that people do with DNS. I thought 20 crazy DNS tricks, number 5 will shock you. And I also kind of think that a DNS museum might be quite an interesting thing to set up of some sort, because a lot of these things don't work, unfortunately, anymore. But I went with some sort of clickbaity title, the crazy uses of DNS, because maybe people will click on that on Twitter. Yeah, so why am I doing this? Well, I mean, it's mostly John Todd's fault. As everyone knows, it's very important to have someone to blame for anything, really. This came up because we are members of the DNS abuse SIG, which you can see the URL to on the screen at first. And we talk about different types of DNS abuse and the different techniques which were used. And I think the conversation was along the lines of malware distribution via DNS. And I found it very funny that I thought, oh, you know, that's hilarious. Nobody's done that. Nobody would do anything like that. But like Rule 34, as soon as you think of something, it kind of brings it into existence. So I think it probably has been used to distribute malware before. And if it hasn't, then it will be soon. So yeah, my thinking is that let's not try and think of anything too crazy, lest it brings it into existence. And also thank you, John, for the laugh. So the first section I want to talk about is trace routes, and they're technically not 100% DNS because it's all to do with the routing in the back end, but you couldn't get these lovely trace routes without DNS reverse records being set up. And one of the first DNS tricks that I ever came across was the Star Wars trace route, sorry. And the way these work is that you set up a static route, so you know that the route, what hops are you're going to go through when you get to a particular destination, and you set up the reverse for all the different hops that are involved, and it spells out or shows some piece of text. This is the Star Wars intro, which is the famous kind of diagonal, like scrolling text that comes up at the beginning of the movies. This was February 11th, 2013 was the first instance I could find of this. It was by Ryan Werber of Beagle Networks. And very quickly it went down because of a DDoS attack, which he said was just bullying. Apparently this was hosted on a T1 originally, which quickly died, and then he moved it somewhere else, and then his ISP got upset with him and told him to turn it off. Some IPv6 versions did pop up at some point, but I haven't managed to get a screenshot of any of those, so this is what you get. But you can see that there's the text there on the screen. Yeah, gone but not forgotten. I think that's true of a lot of these things. This is the first, well, not the first, but like one of the more interesting IPv6 trace routes that I saw. Apparently there's more of this if you show more hops, and there's a like scrolling, yeah, more stuff if you keep on going down the trace route. I don't actually have access to a machine with IPv6 enabled on it, so I couldn't check it out for myself. But this is like the first proper IPv6 one. And it's also kind of mysterious because I don't really know who's behind it. I know it's hand.bb0.nl, but I'm not really sure who that is. There's some references to it on Twitter, but I couldn't really figure out who the author is. And also, if you try to go to the website, it doesn't, well, go to hand.bb0.nl in a browser, it doesn't show anything. This is probably my favorite example, which is by a guy called Sebastian Haas. It's done via IPv6, and he's actually got a library called Fakert or Fake Route, which allows you to set up static routes or fake routes on your side if you've got a slash whatever routed towards you. So yeah, this is kind of an example of using Fakert, and it showed the Euro 2020 scores live as they happened. So if you kept up an MTR or something, then it would update it as results were posted, which I thought was brilliant, and actually, you know, got quite popular on Twitter. This is just a silly. If anybody knows Dr. Horrible's sing-along, he's got a song called Bad Horse, which is just great. It's by a guy called Ambrose Chua. And there's a link to the video on the last slide, which I encourage everybody to go and have a look at, because it's about 60 seconds long, and it's Bad Horse, Bad Horse. Great, love Dr. Horrible. And yeah, this is the Bad Horse. Oh, sorry, hang on, did I get mixed up there? Oh no, I did, I'm so sorry, I wasn't even looking at my own screenshots. This is Ambrose Chua, who did my trace routes showing stars. Oh my god, I put a link to this at the end. It's a parody song, sorry. This is the Bad Horse, which is Dr. Horrible. Sorry for getting mixed up there. You can see how well I prepared for this. Thanks, Andrew. I'm really, you know, totally professional with this. You might also want to go and have a look at the certificate chain. If you go to signed.bad.horse in a browser, the search chain there is pretty funny as well. And as I said, there's a link to the YouTube video at the end. And by request, Andrew asked if I was going to be putting in some Christmas themed or Thanksgiving themed slides. And I did manage to find this Christmas tree, which is unfortunately not working anymore, but maybe they could resurrect it for December. But we need some sort of advent calendar or something more dynamic for the trace routes, I think. Okay, so the next section is tools and toys. I was actually hoping I would find more of these when I started looking for them, because it feels like there's a lot of promise with some of the things that people are doing. Obviously, I should be doing more to make life interesting on the internet for people, now that I'm doing DNS properly. And lately I have set up my own server, so hopefully I can provide some entertainment for other people at some point soon. But I'm not promising anybody a deadline on any of that. This is another one of the first tricks I came across, which was a calculator via DNS. It was hosted at dns.postel.org, and it's sadly not working anymore. It did work not too long ago because I tried it out, but when I tried it to take a screenshot, it wasn't working. This is from the documentation. Again, there's links. The last slide is just going to be a ton of links to everywhere. There's also a version of reverse Polish calculator out there as well, which I don't know, just seems perverse to me because my brain just doesn't work like that. But I guess the mathematicians, perhaps there's a reason for reverse Polish calculators existing in the first place. But yeah, it's pretty cool. You can, I don't know if it works by, I assume it's not just a lookup in a massive database of numbers. But so there's probably something dynamic going on there, but I don't really know much about it except for this. The next one is the my IP address. So I move around a lot, I travel a lot, and it's useful to know my external IP, and just Googling for what is my IP will show you. And you can go to, I think, myip.org, and there's lots of different services. But one of the cooler ones for DNS is that you can use special addresses at OpenDNS and Google, and it will tell you what your IP is, which I think is just brilliant. I prefer the OpenDNS implementation because it just straight up gives you the IP, and that must be dynamic. And I think this could also be used for leak tests and that kind of thing as well. Both of these still work. That's my MacBook Pro screenshot that you see there. So yeah, I did want to include, because so many of these don't work, I did find it funny that, of course, the Google one works because this is fairly famous XKCD comic where, you know, Google is shutting down everything, but 8.8.8.8 is always going to work. And apparently they're my IP address servers as well. So this is a pretty cool service from Team Kimru, which is IP to ASN mappings. This is pretty much just a database lookup, I think, although I don't know how it's on the back end, if it's served by like a database, like an actual database, MySQL or something, or if it's how it's compiled. It's essentially same to this Whois service, but it's faster. And it's machine readable, which is actually useful for a lot of applications. And it's been around for quite a while as well. So you can see here on the bottom screenshot that I have misunderstood how to do the lookups because I typed in 192.168.0.1 and it's the other way around, it's the reverse. But I thought I'd include that there because it shows an example of multiple results and also because, you know, I'm just a bit dumb. Anyway, moving on. The next one is a tool. This is another database lookup from Jan-Piet Mens, Florian of BSD Networks, and Oli Shaka, which is the airports in around the world. The Netherlands location codes and SHA-256.net and zip codes in Switzerland. I really like these little applications because I think they're pretty easy to set up, and I think you can convert a database into a zone file pretty easily. And it's so fast and useful. And you can do it from the command line. You don't have to worry about web pages or anything as long as you remember this the format. Which maybe is the hard part. I think I would like to do something like this, but on a dynamic basis for the things I'm thinking of doing with my little, I'll say bind, but it might not be bind for very long. Anyway, yeah, pretty cool. Another one, another lookup service is UK postcode locations. I find this really useful as well because you can plug it into Google Maps and you can see that there's a bunch of different, another one from JP Menzel at MP, the bottom there with his TXT records for the zip codes in Germany. The top one, the UK postcode locations, is from Tony Finch, who lists himself on Twitter as working for the Cambridge Office of Epithets and Numerology, which I think is a lie, unless, but he's brilliant. He's one of the most interesting people I know on Twitter. He posts about some I don't know how he finds all the things that he retweets. He must have a very extensive follow list, but yeah, he's got a bunch of other projects as well. To do with time zones and leap seconds and that sort of thing as well, which is brilliant. And she's got a long running thread about some construction work going on, which I find fascinating for some reason. I love it. This is my favorite little sort of toy. It's not really even a toy, but geocaching, for anybody who's not familiar with it, is basically a game where you can go and find geocaches all around the world. There's millions of them. There's actually even one on the International Space Station. And there's lots of different kinds. There's ones that just straight up give you the coordinates. But there are other ones where you have to solve a little clue first. There's multi-caches and all sorts of different kinds. And this one is Dortnik Suchen, apologies for my pronunciation there, DNS, and it's a cache by, I don't know if this is, I would love it if this really is Dr. Mokopetris himself, but I don't think it is him. But the clue is just a host name. And to find, so what you usually do in these puzzle caches is that you get different numbers and you plug them into a little a kind of code thing, and then this is part of it. And the reverse, or the text record for this host name is the hint for this particular cache. And I just thought that was great. I used to go geocaching quite a lot, and I think it's a brilliant hobby if you ever get bored and want to go and explore some strange parts of the world. So the next section is tunneling, which is a really interesting way of using DNS. Tunneling itself is, it could be applied to lots of different network protocols, and it's essentially sending data over the protocol, which was not generally intended to be sent over the protocol. I got this from a webpage, daemon.be/martin/dnstunnel.html, which will be in the last slide. And this was discussed on Slashdot back in 2000. I mean, tunneling itself is no new thing, but some of the specific techniques are really interesting. And you can use any record type as well, pretty much. You can use DS records, NS records, I think even probably SOA records. It's basically embedded data that allows you to run other things over the top. And some examples of this. Here is, well, this is kind of tunneling. I'm not sure if this really counts as a database lookup or not, or tunneling, but it feels like tunneling to me. But it's Wikipedia over DNS. This is where you can look up a TXT record for something.wp.dg.cx, and it will return the Wikipedia entry. It's truncated because, you know, of the limits of TXT records. This is by a guy called David Ledbetter, dgx.dg.cx, who told me that it's apparently a pretty simple custom Perl-based DNS server, which he wrote for something else. And the data is pre-calculated. He gets an XML dump from Wikipedia and stores it in a level DB database. So giving fast lookup to the database. Apparently he's got some ideas for how to do it in the future, but it's quite an interesting application. And you can see down the bottom, he's even got non-ASCII versions working, which is just awesome, I think. I mean, very, very cool. This one is great. This is one guy called Harshad Sharma, who was trying to break Coder's block, which I think is a great term, Coder's block. He was stuck for something to do and decided to create a way to publish a blog via a DNS server. And this is with manually updating the TXT records in the zone. But you can do lookups and various different applications. It's like a very, very lightweight WordPress install, I guess. You can see that the latest published blog post and the index of all the different posts, and you can read a specific one by using a key from the index. which is great. I love it. I think it's brilliant. And you could write things on top of this, which would actually have like a web interface and just get the data from DNS. I think I would almost rather update a zone file by hand than use WordPress sometimes, to be honest. This is, okay, sorry, actually, I've gotten this the wrong way. Here we go. Yes, this is, sorry, DNSFS. I've titled it MP3s because I was copying slides and I'm frankly rubbish at slides. This is actually DNSFS, and this is by Ben Cox of benjojo.co.uk, and he has got basically a way of storing arbitrary data in other people's DNS caches. It's taking things kind of to an extreme here, and there's a whole a very quite technical description of how everything works and how you can implement it and how you can do it yourself. And it's really quite genius, really, because it splits the data into chunks, and you can then retrieve it from everybody else is essentially hosting your data for free, which is a kind of a line I felt like he's not making money from it. But in a moment, I'll show some other things where people have started to do things like that. And I'm sort of morally against doing this, because you're really using other people's infrastructure to do something for free. And you know, DNS is a highly available, massively redundant, incredibly fast system which the internet runs on, and sort of storing your own files on there is a bit cheeky, I think. But it did result in one guy, as a kind of proof of concept, streaming MP3s via DNSFS, which is just bonkers, really. I mean, the fact that you can do this, it's the typical tech nerd thing of taking things and then adding a level and adding a level and adding a level, and getting to the point where you can stream MP3s over DNS. But brilliant. I mean, just mad. So another example of tunneling over DNS is Iodine, which is IP over DNS. It's a similar concept of, you know, embedding IP packets inside DNS packets, and you run with the client and the server, and it looks like standard DNS traffic, but it's actually IP. I love this for a couple of reasons, just because it's, you know, you shouldn't be able to do this, but you can. But one of the lovely things I think about this is that it's called Iodine because it's IP over DNS, but Iodine also has the atomic number of 53, which is just perfect. It's IPv4, but the DNS server can listen on IPv6 as well. So the data inside is only IP4 inside the tunnel. This is a browser tunnel, which I think is actually approaching Andrew's wish of DOH over HTTP over DNS. Yeah, I think that's right. So this is, it can send arbitrary strings over DNS by encoding the string in a subdomain. This is also a technique which is used by malware quite not uncommonly. I'd like to do a separate presentation one day just on malware stuff, but that's going to take me another 6 months to do. So again, no promises on that. But some of the techniques they're using are really interesting, and how this is also a step towards the malware distribution as well, I think, because malware is doing something like this already, mostly with C2 communication. But yeah, as I said, that's a whole other topic. But yes, this is HTTP over DNS. So we can have, what would the acronym be? HODOTO? I don't know, something to think about. Oh, sorry, yes, and this is by Jesse Lee, who is a Veggie Defender on GitHub. This is something called SlowDNS, which is an actual thing you can install on your Android device, which will run as a VPN and passes data over DNS. It's very slow, as implied by the name, but it works. And I think this is really cool because it has a lot of uses in places where internet traffic is very heavily monitored or restricted. And in this case, it will actually allow people to do things that they need to do but aren't able to. So yeah, pretty cool. You can install it from the Google Play Store, I think. And this is my sort of favorite example of tunneling, which is DNS Cap 2. It's a basically generic tunneling. You can have you install a server and a client. It's a bit like Iodine in that respect, and it's got a whole bunch of different features. So you can set up windows and send on different channels, and you can just basically generic DNS tunneling. So I have a look at this. The README documentation for this by Iagox or GitHub or Ron, as his profile says. It lets you don't need a domain. You can set it up to listen on whatever port you like as well. But if you set it up on port 53 and start sending data about real domains, so you can actually configure it on a legit DNS server or authoritative server, and it will look just like normal traffic. So this is a pretty effective way of hiding data. So yeah, just to finish up, there's a few other things that I mentioned before where people have taken things just again a bit even further. Oh, this is DNSFS. Yes, sorry, I put it here. I'm all over the place. I do apologize. I think it's crazy that you can use other people's DNS cache to host your own data. And because it's so resilient and long-lasting, and you can set your own DTLs, and it's globally distributed and highly available and so fast, it just seems, I mean, it seems brilliant, but when are people going to start clamping down on it? I don't know, maybe some people already are. I don't think it's really in use that much that it's a problem for anybody with this kind of infrastructure, but it feels like it's kind of almost at the point where people are going to start abusing it. When we start getting illegal content, I guess that might be the line. This is Corey Quinn, who is an AWS consultant at the Duckbill Group. He's the chief cloud economist, apparently. He's very entertaining on Twitter, and he's long held that the DNS is the world's biggest key value store, which is true. And there's a story where he actually, when he was working at AWS, I think, he actually used Route 53 for config management, which is just terrible. You shouldn't do that. But they did. And it's worth checking out the whole story. He did a podcast on this, and he talks about it every now and again on Twitter. He's very entertaining. I find him, he posts a lot though. So yeah, I have to mute him every now and again. But yeah, like even inside a company that actually provides DNS services, they were, I mean, depends on your definition of abuse, but they were misusing DNS, I think. Another thing which was there's an RFC behind this for brand indicator records. This is a thing called Bimmy, where you were able to set a specific record in the authoritative domain, and when you were sending out email from there, or sending out I don't know, websites, or website links or landing pages or whatever, you could have your branding in it. And there's an example here with the brand indicators thing. The interesting thing I think about this was that some marketing companies actually wanted to spin this into a specific product or feature, and they were trying to sell it. And really all it is just a TXT record starting _Bimmy. This RFC has expired, I think. So I don't think it really took off. But it was an interesting concept. So, and we have a lot of things that do similar, have similar functionality. I mean, with like SPF records, they're all under underscore SPF, and that style of DNS uses is still around. So the next one is this company called Freenum. They have built a whole protocol called, you can see it at numprotocol.com. And there's a company called Num Technology. What they want to do is use the DNS to store contacts. And that's, I think, their sort of proof of concept of the Num protocol, where they have gone to the company's house in the UK, which is where every company has to be registered, and taken all the data because it's freely available and stuck it in DNS. And they've got this fairly, there's a whole paper behind how the Num protocol works, and it's just a way of looking up contacts. But again, it's using other people's infrastructure for their data, really. They've got the authority to do its own, but all the stuff in the middle is kind of, they promote it as being very, very fast and an efficient way, and human computer readable and all this stuff. And that is purely because of other people's infrastructure. But go and have a look. They've got some NPM modules and developer docs, and they've been pushing it a fair bit. I mean, we'll see if it takes off. But if it does take off, I think people are going to start asking for money for this kind of thing, which is going to get very complicated and not going to be fun. And yes, this is actually DNSKV. So taking Corey Quinn's thing about it being the DNS being the biggest key value store in the world, someone's gone ahead and done it. And there is DNSKV.com, and you can actually set data on that service, anything you like, and you get a private key, private because it's DNS. And when you do a lookup, you can set keys and store them and retrieve them and delete them and all the kind of standard things you can do with the KV with the key value store. So yeah, this exists, and someone's gone ahead and done it, not just as a kind of joke, but they promote themselves as being privacy preserving and all sorts. So see how that works out. Right, that is it. Here is the list of links. I will send the slides to the mailing list if anybody's interested. But otherwise, speak. You can find me on the Twitters and whatever. So thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks, Peter. I'm sure there were some surprises in there. And whilst you were talking, I dug out my HP12C. And much to my surprise, I probably haven't used it for about 20 years. It switched on, which was a shock. Obviously, I've had it 20 years because I used to give these out in primary school, in case anyone was wondering.
What? Yeah, I don't know what the point of the reverse Polish is. I'm not a mathematician.
Yeah. Anyway, I can see that there's some comments in the chat, not least of which I think John sort of querying about the TTLs for stuff. I suppose if people are storing data in the DNS, the actual TTL will have a bearing on how problematic that is or isn't. I'm not sure that's a question. It might be. If you happen to know the answer by any chance, Paul, Peter, rather.
I think that's, yeah, I guess the TTLs are the most important thing. Like, how long is that data going to be around for? But one of the things about the DNSFS is that when it expires, it will push it again to be stored in another cache. So it's designed to be persistent data. Like the streaming MP3 thing is just crazy, but it worked. So yeah.
This is where I announced I'm launching a new competitor to iCloud. It's going to be called aCloud.
Yeah.
It's $1 cheaper per subscriber than the Apple equivalent, with very good margins, zero cost to provide. Yeah, Kevin has tested that Bad Horse is still working, which is good to know. And yeah, so anyone else got any questions or additions that have thus far been overlooked? Some other unsung uses to add to the catalogue?
I will say that it's not all of the examples that I came across. A lot of them quite similar, and like Tony Finch has a bunch more things, and I think Mems has some other things, but it's all that were in the slides.
Yeah, maybe just one thing that I would like to add here, which was a very smart way to use DNS in internal DNS. When a small company started to grow and became an international corporation, a small IT guy needed a way to store the information for the print spool servers for every single client. And so there was a script that was running every time when somebody logged into a machine, and he stored the string that he needed to access the spool server in DNS. So he did more or less the same like this DNS file system. So base 64 and added some dots, yada, yada, yada. And what a script is doing, the script is just querying DNS for a TXT record. And based on the location of the client, it gets a different TXT record. And based on that, the client is using a different spool server to print stuff, which was a quite smart way to make something like this work when you just one-man show that is administrating the IT of a huge enterprise.
Please send me more details about that. I would love to.
It's somehow confidential, so it's I really have to find out if I can share more about that, because there are a lot of fancy, very, very old scripts running on some Solaris boxes in the background.
Brilliant. Well, I'm sure this is one that will continue to grow pretty much as long as DNS is around. So this will be the never to be finished presentation.
Absolutely. That's why I like the idea about the Museum of DNS as well, because a lot of these things have kind of gone away. But I think it's the kind of thing where you can keep expanding the exhibits. Like you say, they're never going to end, are they?
I think a while ago, something like, I don't know, 1 or 2 years ago, there was a presentation, I think it was ORAC, somewhere else, where people analyzed the public DNS and where people actually stored passwords and stuff like that in DNS to make it accessible easily. I have to look it up. I think it was one of the DNS conferences a while ago where somebody was analyzing this stuff.
Brilliant. All right, well, draw a line under that then. So thank you very much, Peter, Pat, and I'm sure that those people that took out the weekend for Thanksgiving hopefully found that a fairly easy way into the start of the new week, not too demanding. So thank you for doing that. Right, let's just swiftly move on. We won't take up too much time, I don't think, but let me go back to share my slides just briefly. We've done all of that. So just briefly, a couple of things to draw your attention to. From the weekly headlines, I will immodestly point out there's an excellent post on AppNic about the impact of private relay on network operators and ISPs. So well worth having a look at that if you haven't already done so. Thanks to the AppNic team for posting that. I think it was on Friday that appeared. So that's there. Perhaps more seriously, the other two worth just referencing. Also on AppNic on the blog this week was a study looking at the adoption of DNS security mechanisms, which unsurprisingly found out that the adoption rate was in proportion to the ease of use of the mechanisms and their cost. So the cheaper and easier to set up, the more likely they were to be adopted, which is unsurprising, but that's actually now backed up by data. And the other thing some people may find helpful was on Ripe's blog was just an update on some of the proposed changes to some of the EU regulations, notably including NIS2, which will potentially affect DNS operators, or there's still some debate about that, but you'll find some of the details on the RIPE blog, so worth taking a look if you're not up to speed with that. And then if my page down works, few things just to highlight which are coming up. First one, which was already mentioned, just as a reminder, DNS OARC started early this afternoon, UK time or European time, and also runs through tomorrow as well. I hadn't put this in my sort of weekly update because, if I'm honest, I forgot, but Andreas, who's on the call, has got his DDI user group on Thursday, and I will modestly recommend a talk on encrypted the DNS update, which is part of the agenda. I think most of the agenda, and Andreas will come on and correct me if I'm wrong, is not unreasonably going to be undertaken in German, I would imagine, as it is actually in Germany.
Yeah. This many thanks for mentioning that. I appreciate it. Yeah, it just started as a German DNS and DHCP and IPAM user group. It's the fourth time that we are doing this, and because I'm getting more and more requests from people around the world, I'm actually thinking about to make this something like an international event, where people can just share experiences when they are running DNS, DHCP, and IPAM environments. And yeah, on Thursday I will just check that with the members if they would be happy to widen the audience to other countries as well. But for now, yeah, it's just a German user group.
Yeah. Although to manage expectations, the encrypted DNS update won't be in German, because I will bring down Google Translate otherwise, which would be, I'm sure, a bad experience for all concerned.
Yeah, right.
But I imagine most of the rest of the content will be in German. But nevertheless, I think they've always been good events, the last ones anyway, so I'm sure they'll be much the same on Thursday.
Thank you.
And then, of course, next week is IGF, which we sort of covered largely last week, so I won't spend any time on that, other than remind you on next Thursday, we've got a panel discussion on the state of DNS privacy technologies, which is the only DNS specific workshop through IGF, but there's a bunch of other very interesting content throughout the week as well. But just a reminder to register for that if you're planning to attend. And then on the 14th, we've got the ICANN Resolver Operator Forum coming up with a very strong selection of speakers over, I think it's only 2 hours, so it's pretty well-packed content. So I'm sure that'll be an excellent use of time. And then as we run up to Christmas, got the Bloomberg Tech Summit also on the 14th and the 15th. And then we will very much be fast approaching Christmas. We will probably potentially have a call the following Monday, but that will be pretty informal, I suspect. But which segues fantastically well into agenda items that we do have coming up. Kevin Bock is going to be talking to us about server-side evasion of filtering next Monday, so that's going to be the main focus of this call next week, and definitely worth sort of listening to joining in the call, particularly if you're involved in content filtering in any way. So I think it'd be especially pertinent to you, but of general interest as well. We'll have IGF highlights the following Monday, and then, as I say, on the 20th, we'll probably have a fairly informal chat, and just pre-Christmas. And I'm still trying to get Cloudflare and Google to put people up to talk about, in Cloudflare's case, adoption of ECH, and in Google's case, support for DO within the forthcoming Android 13. But there'll be topics for the new year. I suspect they can't see us getting those in between now and the end of this year. And that was pretty much everything from me. Does anyone have anything else that you want to share this week? So you might to, in fact, if I stop sharing my screen so I can see. Anyone else got anything to raise this week? Feel free to either put it in the chat, raise your virtual hand, or just unmute and say so. Give you a moment or two to do so. Doesn't look like it. Yeah, in which case, have a fantastic week. At the moment, I'm still planning to be in Poland next week, so if you are there as well, do let me know. So, barring any late changes to travel arrangements, but otherwise, I say have a fantastic week, and we'll speak same time next week to find out more about server-side evasion from Kevin. So, see you then. Thanks very much, everyone.
See you on Thursday. Take care.
Indeed.
Cheers.
Bye all.
Thanks, Andrew.